Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. Thanks for tuning back in. Today's is going to be a fun one. I get a lot of questions from people asking me specifically what are my favorite baits to fish with. And the honest answer is I like fishing with whatever bait is working at that time, but I definitely have some that I absolutely prefer to fish with. And if I could, I would fish with them year round. The problem is they don't always generate the strikes when I need them to. But this is going to be an episode regarding the 5 baits I absolutely love to fish with. They're just fun baits, they catch fish, and they're my favorite bites. So, what I want to hear from you guys is what are your favorite baits to use? And I'm not talking necessarily just from the standpoint of fish catching, but if you could, what would be the baits to fish with because they're fun to use? You enjoy them. For me, it's all about how visual is it? How easy are they to use? I mean, a lot of techniques I enjoy fishing with because they're just simple, laid back approaches versus maybe an aggressive power fishing bait like, your vibrating jigs or crankbaits. I mean, some of those things are uh, not the easiest to fish with because they either entail a lot of, really snapping the rods, a lot of aggressive motion. Maybe it's just hard to use all day long. I tend to prefer from a fun standpoint to fish with baits that are easy to fish with. I like baits that cast really well because I like to cast under bushes and skip baits under docks and do things like that. So I enjoy baits like that. There's a lot of different factors here, and obviously, I want a bait that catches fish. So I want to break down what are some of my absolute favorite baits to fish with and kind of give you some background as to why. So first and foremost, I've grown up very much a shallow water power fisherman, fishing on the Wisconsin River, northern Wisconsin lakes. It's just kind of how I grew up fishing. So a lot of timber, a lot of lily pads, a lot of current based fishing. And because of that, to me, a Texas rig is definitely one of my favorite baits to fish with. This is the Berkeley Pit Boss, one of my absolute go-tos for Texas rigging. And honestly, from a Texas rig standpoint, I don't care if I'm flipping with an 1/8 ounce weight or I'm flipping with a 2.5 ounce weight. I love flipping and pitching. To me, it's one of the most enjoyable ways to fish because it's almost like a game in itself where you got to place the bait in a very specific spot. So that's a challenge in itself. And then a lot of the bites you get are good, aggressive bites. And then once you hook the fish, sometimes the battle can be really good to get them out of that heavy cover. There's a lot of things going on when you're flipping and pitching with a Texas rig, and therefore it's one of my absolute favorites. It's one of the baits I've been throwing the longest. Regardless of when I started, it was a Berkeley power worm, a 7-inch worm. Generally, it was either like a motor oil color or it was a black with a pink or red fire tail, whatever you want to call it. That's kind of what I started with, Tequila Sunrise. And now I fish a lot more creature style and cross style baits when I'm flipping and pitching. But the matter of fact is, I just love a Texas rig. I love to flip and pitch. It's one of my favorite things to do. And if I could fish every tournament that way, I would do it. So that's the first set of baits. The next one is one I mentioned the other day when I was talking about floating worms, like this guy right here. This is the Zoom merthiolate trick worm. One of my favorite ways to fish for a couple of reasons. One is it's extremely visual. When you get on a good floating worm bite, you see the fish come flying out of nowhere and your bait disappear. You get very aggressive bites out of the fish. It's very much a reactionary type of fishing, but at the same time, it's a lot of finesse style fishing. Meaning I use this on spinning gear, relatively light line. It's not an aggressive bait to work. You kind of snap it a few times, let the worm dance around, and the fish come flying out of nowhere for it. I also like it because I'm generally fishing around cover. It's a really good bait for skipping across the water under docks, under bushes, around laydowns, holes in lily pads. It's just a really good bait from that standpoint to fish with, but it's a visual thing for me. I just love being able to see whether it's this merthiolate or a white one or a lime green one. You just get to watch the fish eat your bait. And to me, there's not much better than actually seeing the fish bite your bait. So if I had to choose, the merthiolate color would be my number one, but a trick worm is one of my favorite ways to fish. Unfortunately, it's generally not an outstanding bite year round. It's good during the spring, it's good during the warm water, but then it kind of, warm water periods, and it kind of dies off. Next up, staying along those same lines, is a Topwater Popper. I love, love, love fishing topwaters. I think most people out there would say that they enjoy fishing topwaters as well. But to me, there's a lot of different variations of topwaters. A popper is going to be one of my absolute favorites. This is an old one I took off my wall of fame. This is an old Rebel popper that has won me a lot of money in some tournaments, and I ended up retiring it just because I didn't want to lose it. It's a pretty cool color as well. But ultimately, what it comes down to with a popper, for me, it's a lot of precise casting. I fish it very much in very tight quarters. You know, I'm not working this bait generally all the way back to the boat. I'm fishing it for 10 or 15 feet, reel it in, make another precise cast. It's a great way to catch river smallmouths, you know, largemouth. Everything eats a popper, but for me, I like it more than a lot of other topwaters because of how just how laid back it is. It's not like I'm throwing a buzzbait where I'm casting and winding, which is great too, but I like to bloop this thing around. I think the bites can be pretty vicious, and I just love a good popper. A popper is one of my favorite ways to fish, and I would think most of you guys out there too love some form of topwater. Maybe it's a plopper style bait, maybe it's that, maybe it's a walking bait. There's not much better than a good topwater bite. Frogs would be right up there with the popper as well. But it just seems like the popper is something that gets more bites for me. Next up, you know, we're going to go with the hover rig here, guys. This is one of my absolute favorite baits to catch fish on. And I think it just has to do with the fact that I'm catching them on a bait that I've designed. So for me, every time I hook a fish on a hover rig, it's just such a good feeling, because not only am I catching the fish on a jig head that I designed, I'm catching it on a rod that I build. It's just one of those things. It just feels completely full circle for me, but it's a really fun way to fish. It is very laid back. You throw it out, let it just slowly glide down to the bottom, give it a quick snap, and it darts off the bottom and glides back down. It's generating a ton of bites for myself and a bunch of you guys out there. I know there's still a lot of people who are waiting to get theirs, but we're really filling orders very quick now. So if you haven't gotten them yet, you're going to be getting them soon. It's the Core Tackle Hover Rig. I'll put that in the video description for you. I'll put links to all of these baits in the video description for you so that you guys can go check them out for yourself. But for me, the hover rig with something like this 4¼ inch Berkley Max Scent Flatworm in the Kobayashi color is a killer. Or maybe you like it on the Kitech Shad Impact. Maybe you like it on a Fluke. Lots and lots of good baits out there to rig it on. But it's a really laid back way to fish. And it's extremely rewarding to me personally to be able to catch fish on a bait that I've designed and brought to market. Lastly, this may be one that surprises you guys a little bit, because I've talked about how much I hate a jerkbait, and it does drive me nuts in the boat from a standpoint of getting tangled with everything. It gets caught in the carpet, it gets caught with other rods on the deck. But having said that, I've always compared a jerkbait bite to bobber fishing. And I know that sounds weird, but the reason for it is you jerk it down, you let it sit there, maybe you give it 5 seconds, all of a sudden you feel tick and you set the hook. To me, that tick is like watching your bobber go under. It's very, very similar feeling for me. I don't know why. A lot of you guys are probably watching and going, I don't agree at all with that comparison. But for me, every time I fish a jerkbait, I feel like I'm watching a bobber, because it's just simply me working it down, letting it suspend there, and you get a good tick, and it's like, set the hook, time to set the hook. It's a fun, rewarding way to fish. The jerkbait, this is the Berkley Stunna, one of my favorites. This is the Shad Fillet Color, which I know I've talked a lot about on the channel. So this is the one that I'm going to be throwing. Just a great way to fish. I don't know, you know, I think a lot of it too is the fact that a jerkbait, we know, is very much a very good year-round bait. But there's something special to me when it's like 42-degree water temp and you're catching them on a jerkbait. You're not catching them on many other baits, but they're still eating that really good. I don't know. There's a lot of memories that go into jerkbait fishing for me too, since I was a little kid. But those are 5 baits, man, that if I could fish every tournament I ever fish, if I could fish every day of fun fishing, I would be a very, very happy camper. Unfortunately, they don't always catch fish. You got to let the fish tell you what you need to be using. And therefore, I will gladly throw whatever they're eating on that day. But these baits are fun. Let me know in the comments section, what are your most favorite baits to fish? Now, we're not talking most productive. We're talking, what are the baits that you would use if you could throw them every day because they're fun baits to fish? So let me know in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, new video coming out tomorrow.